Yeah, and of course, the Prime Minister has been in Brussels this morning, meeting with the with the NATO Secretary General, going to travel to Warsaw this afternoon. Liz Truss is in Moscow, meeting her counterpart, Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, due in Moscow tomorrow. Joining me in the studio to discuss all of this and more is the Conservative MP, Peter Bone. Peter, first of all, Lord Dannatt there suggesting that he doesn't think war still is likely. Is there a circumstance here where we might be playing into Vladimir Putin's hands with President Macron travelling to Moscow, the military build-up, that he is getting the attention and to a degree some of the concessions he wants?
Well, I think he gets the attention by putting all those troops on the border. And when you start building military field hospitals, it seems more than an exercise. It seems like they're deadly serious. So I think it's quite right that the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, the Defence Secretary do as much talking as they possibly can to try and stop it happening, this invasion. But, I mean, I know Parliament is ready to be recalled next week because they think it's that imminent a possibility.
Do you think the UK could be going further, though? I mean, at the end of the day, we're diplomatically trying to prevent an invasion that, frankly, will be the decision of Vladimir Putin's. I don't know how much sway we have. I mean, is there anything more militarily we could be doing to try and deter this from happening? Well,
we're the biggest supporter of NATO in Europe, second biggest other than the Americans. Prime Minister Day is committing more troops to NATO. And it seems to me that perhaps some of the other European countries should be stepping up to the plate, and particularly Germany.
Germany's got this kind of slightly, from our perspective, kind of odd position, doesn't it, where it doesn't seem to be taking as hard a line as Britain or indeed other European allies and the United States. Why do you think that is?
Well, they've got this problem with the energy supply linked to Russia, and they almost, in a way, appear to be certainly not being strong enough on Russia and almost being a sort of satellite nation or influenced by Russia, which probably tells you that you need to have your energy supply sorted out. I find it very strange. I mean, I'm old enough to grow up in the period when we used to worry about this daily. We used to worry about, is there going to be a war in nuclear? Is there going to be a nuclear war or whatever? That's gone away. The Cold War has gone away. It seems to have come back now.
Has it, though? Are we slightly over-egging this? Russia's invaded Georgia. It's annexed Crimea. It's essentially in charge of large parts of eastern Ukraine as it is. Prime Minister saying this is the greatest potential threat of war in Europe in half a century. Are we talking this up almost?
I don't think so, because you've proved the point, haven't you? These things have been allowed to go unchallenged. And there will
But no one was talking about when Crimea was annexed or the Donbass region that we were in that circumstance.
So it all builds up. And, if you looked up to what happened before, in fact, the Second World War, there were a lot of incidents before that. This may be a reflection on what the American president did in Afghanistan. And maybe the Russians think that they can threaten and take control that way because the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan overnight.
Let's move on because you're a former leader and Prime Minister John Major. So John Major has been speaking this morning, saying that Boris Johnson and his officials broke lockdown laws over the parties in Downing Street, adding that this outright lie breeds contempt. Do you agree?
I don't agree with much of what John Major says, and I think those are appalling comments. He is prejudging a police investigation. He has said somebody is guilty, and we don't even know if there was a crime involved or if anyone's going to be charged with anything. It's extraordinary that a former Prime Minister should do this. The bitterness that John Major has.
Well, we know there were parties in Downing Street.
Well,
I mean, so James Slack, who attended one of these parties, is now deputy editor of The Sun, but was the Prime Minister's former director of communications, has apologised for attending a party. Now, I bet the Prime Minister wasn't at, but we know.
That's it.
No, but there were parties in Downing Street.
Yes, but that's the point. He wasn't there, the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister has apologised for what happened in Downing Street. But so far, nobody has been able to produce any evidence to prove that he was at a party. So for John Major to say he's broken the law, well, surely his hatred for Boris is so much that he's going to prejudge a police investigation. I'm afraid John Major is completely out of order with those remarks.
The Prime Minister asked again this morning repeatedly if he would resign if he was handed a fixed penalty notice, essentially if the police had judged that he had attended one of these parties illegally. I mean, do you think that's the threshold for a resigning matter?
No, I don't actually. I think we have to wait for the report and we shall all make our judgment. But wasn't a question put to him at NATO when he was talking about Ukraine and this, what would happen if you get a fixed penalty notice? I mean, have some people in the media gone mad? I mean, that's completely irrelevant. I mean, I've done hours and hours of canvassing in the last 3 weeks in Northamptonshire, and people bring up issues on the doorstep. They bring up Ukraine. They bring up the cost of living. They bring up the immigration of small boats coming across the channel. They don't bring up whether there was a party in Downing Street. Now, if you hate Boris, if you're a sort of dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporter, yes, of course, they shout it at you from the doorstep. But the average person is concerned about other issues. Fancy bringing that question up at a NATO summit to discuss
we live in a country with a free press and they're allowed to ask as many questions as they want.
Would you have asked that question?
And I think you're also allowed to criticise the press, and that's how we live. And I'm sure they will answer their own questions in time. Just on this, though, but you are saying if the Prime Minister is found to have broken the rules that he himself imposed on everyone else.
I think I said we'll wait and see what the
report
report
you said you don't think he should resign, though.
I didn't say just because he gets a fixed penalty note, because we don't know what the circumstances are. Let's wait for... Now, look, I think Sue Gray's report should be published now. I see no reason to delay. We should not be in this situation where we have to wait weeks for this, because it just seems to be totally... It's much more important that we get this out and get this thing done with. Let's, have that report. Let's look at what it says and then make our decision. I think prejudging it is really wrong. And
just for one final question on another really important topic, this national insurance rise, start of April, is it the wrong tax at the wrong time?
It's the wrong tax at the wrong time, there's no question. I've opposed it, and it seems to me it's not what Conservatives do. It's something that I would like the government to postpone. The Chancellor is very keen on having it, but let's see if we can... The Conservative...
Is the Prime Minister keen on having it?
I'm not so sure he is. My view is that the Conservative way forward is not to raise taxes, is to keep taxes down and grow the economy. That's what we should be doing. We should be putting taxes on jobs, which is what NIC does, is a Labour way, it's not a Conservative way.
OK, Peter Bone, as always, thank you very much indeed for joining us in the studio. Conservative MP there, Peter Bone.